Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Yeiser and this is my introduction for ACTE 699. So a little bit about me. I graduated from Elko High School in 2012. After graduating from high school, I went to Bloomsburg University and graduated in 2016. I graduated with a bachelor's in early childhood education and special education. I actually also minored in educational technology while I was there. I am from Myerstown, Pennsylvania, and I currently still live in Myerstown. It's a little town in between Hershey, Reading, and Harrisburg. And I live with our two dogs. They're yellow labs, and their names are Buddy and Bandit. So my hobbies are, I enjoy reading. Usually it's romance or mysteries, and the mysteries usually have some romance in them as well. I also enjoy going to the beach. My family has a camper in Rehoboth, Delaware. So we go down there on weekends over the summer typically. I also enjoy shopping and going to wineries with my family and friends. So outside of school, those are some of the things that I enjoy doing. As for my teaching background, for 2 years, I was a kindergarten through 4th grade emotional support teacher at Pine Grove Area Elementary School. So I taught math, English language arts, and social skills. Depending on the needs of the students, some of the students were in my classroom for just social skills, and other ones were in there for a good portion of the day. So that was a good experience and a good start to being a teacher. It has taught me a lot. So now I moved on, and this is my second year as the kindergarten through 2nd grade autism support teacher at Eastern Lebanon School District, which is Elko, where I graduated from. So I teach verbal behavior using applied behavior analysis to teach. And then, so for verbal behavior, that includes a whole totally different language, such as MANs, which are just simply known as requests, tasks that are known as labels, listener response, which is where the student responds as a listener, get me the pencil, get me the tissue. They have to do so in order. And then intraverbal questions, so I would say, who is your dad? And they would have to give me the answer. Questions like those. So that's the basis of our teaching and our programming. So I also teach direct instruction math and language arts for some of the students. So that's typically when they are on the 3rd level of the VB map, which is what we assess our students by. Just so you know, the 3rd level is about 48 months developmentally. So I use connecting math concepts and then language for learners, which tells the students kind of how to make a sentence or to use the correct pronouns, to talk about actions in a certain way. And then we also use reading mastery, which focuses on the sounds. And we are also part of a patent autism initiative. And so the next couple slides are kind of going to show you just a little bit into my classroom, since it isn't the typical classroom general education or special education classroom. I figured it'd be a good idea just so you guys can see a little view into what my classroom actually looks like. So this is the classroom schedule. It's myself and 4 paraprofessionals, and each person in the classroom is scheduled to rotate every 15 minutes, and they move to a different student each time, and each activity they do is different. So we have intensive teaching, which is where we work on language skills such as labeling and listening and being able to imitate. And then we also have the MAN sessions where the students are working on learning how to request. So that's the type of schedule we follow every day. This is a typical work area. As you can see, there are dividers for limited distractions. Each person is working in their own little zone, and you can see there's like a number 2 in the back of the 1 zone. That's so we know on the schedule, if it says you're working with a certain student in which area, you know exactly which area you're working in. We also have posted the procedures for each of the operants that we're teaching, as well as how often to reinforce a student and how many things you can have in their field. The next thing, this is just the picture cards. So like I said, it's not typical instruction. We have 3x5 index cards for certain items, and then the rest, as you can see, there's like A, B, C. Those are just pictures of things like an acorn, an apple, an airplane, all through the alphabet. And then the last thing I wanted to share is just that the internal coach in my classroom and I presented at the National Autism Conference over the summer. It was a great opportunity, and we actually presented on the role of treatment, integrity, and fidelity checks in a classroom. So we presented about how checklists really help to make sure your classroom is running how it should be and with fidelity, and how that can affect and impact the students' learning as well as how the classroom's running. Okay, so where am I in the graduate program? This is my last course in the online instruction master's program here at Millersville. Okay, so the 4-step action research process. So which steps do I think will be most difficult? The first step that ironically may be difficult for me is actually collecting the data. So we collect data and graph it every single day for each of our students. But with the action research, however, I feel like it might be difficult for me to make sure I'm collecting the correct data to match the question I'm trying to answer, because there are other variables that may affect the data I'm collecting. So making sure I stick to the exact data I need and collecting it properly is one area that I think might be difficult for me to do. The other area I chose was developing an action plan. So I think it would be difficult to develop what happens next. After collecting the data and analyzing it, I'll have to think about what resources and capabilities I have to move forward. So that might have some effect on the action plan that I create. I'm thinking about if it would require more staff, different types of programming, more technology, and if all those items will be possible or something I'm available to use or to do. So obstacles with action research in daily teaching practices. Time. We always say there's never enough time. So that just goes right with it. We might have time to collect the data because we are constantly assessing in our classrooms. And this I'm going to broaden outside of my classroom as I am on the team leader committee. So I've been in a lot of discussions with other grade level members about time and assessment. So I'm going to broaden a little bit outside of my classroom. So not just collecting the data, but meeting to talk about the data and discuss the process and where to move on next. I know in some of our readings it said those are some of the areas that teams struggle with sometimes, is where to go next, and if they get stuck it might be discouraging. So that'll take time as well on top of the meetings we already have. So the next one that I see as an obstacle is the use of data. Our school, like I said, I'm on the team and we've been talking about assessments, and the use of data is lacking. We're collecting a lot of data on assessments, but we're not using that data in an effective way. So what's happening is students are getting tested and assessed, and only some of that data is being used to determine what type of group students need or what skills we need to work on. So for me, I could see being very discouraging if we're collecting data and we're not using it effectively, or we're not using it at all. So that could be one obstacle. Another one is collaboration. So will others want to collaborate? As I said, I'm on the grade level and team leader committees, and many times it's the same teachers that are on these committees and teams. So if we're already struggling to get people to be on these leadership roles in these leadership teams, will they want to collaborate and meet and spend extra time? One thing I did take away from John Spencer, the video made a great point that doing the action research will allow us to bridge the gap between the research and the participants. Many times we read research and we're like, well, that's not going to work for my class, or we try it and it doesn't work for our class. So doing our own action research will allow us not only to help our students in our classroom or our schools, but make sure it's right for each and every student so that we can move forward and make those changes that those students need. So, stories from the field. The story that resonated the most with me was the Charlotte M. Markland School story. The reason it resonated the most with me is because being a special education teacher, not just even as the autism support teacher, but also as the emotional support teacher, when a general education program doesn't work, putting them in a special education setting where there isn't a program isn't helpful, because then we have to create or find another program that does work for them. So for us, in my current classroom, we use verbal behavior. It does work for most students. There are still some students that are not making adequate progress. There's a student I currently have that he is on still the level 1 of the VB map, and he's been there since kindergarten. He's now in 2nd grade. So he is making progress, but is it adequate enough? For me, thinking about him moving forward into 3rd grade, my answer would be no, but what are we doing about that, and how do we make another program that would work effectively for him? So something else that I noticed and that resonated with me from the Charlotte Markland School is what do we do about the lack of parent and community involvement? So there is a lack of autism awareness throughout the school district. The action research allowed Charlotte and Markland School to identify their individual student needs. As teachers, we also need to identify the individual needs of our students. So that story really resonated with me and the role I'm in right now. What concerns do I have doing action research in my class? So the first concern I have is that my class is a self-contained classroom. A couple students go out for specials, morning meeting, and recess, but those are the only areas that are truly appropriate for their developmental level. Some of them have barriers to group skills and group activities that do not allow them to go out for other activities. Also, another big component is that we're part of the autism initiative, so we have to follow protocols with fidelity. So that could cause an issue moving forward and doing the action research. How can I plan action if I have to follow certain protocols and procedures? Making sure they fit and coincide within each other, but still meet the student's needs is a little bit of a concern for me to see where I can go. Also, the members on our team, like I said, I have 4 paraprofessionals and then myself. There is another autism support teacher within the district. So there's 2 of us that are teachers and then the internal coach. So having a team might be a little difficult because there are very few people that are involved in the classroom and how it's run and what the students' needs are. Another area is limited parent involvement, which I kind of talked about when discussing the Charlotte and Markland School. Parents are not as involved or aware of what is being taught to their child. As you heard, there's different verbal language that goes on within the classroom. We're using words such as tact and manned, which are totally different language than what we're used to hearing versus just saying a label or a request. So sometimes it's hard for the parents to know exactly what is happening in the classroom or how to implement that at home. So how could they replicate the skills and things that we're teaching the children in school at home? And then lack of awareness. So overall, I feel like students, educators, administrators are unaware of how to work with the students with autism, as well as how our classroom and programming is run. Even though there's a lot of communication that is occurring, it's still difficult for them to see how and why the classroom is run that way without being in the classroom for longer periods of time or observations. So those are just some of the areas I have concerns with when looking to do action research within my classroom. I am looking forward, though, to doing the action research and bringing everything together that we've learned throughout this master's program into an action research project in this class. And these are my resources. So thank you, everybody, and I can't wait to work with you guys.